Hello there. I'm so glad you're here, wherever you are in the world. Take a second, type it in the comments. Where are you watching from tonight? I love to picture you, all of you listening in. It makes this feel less like a story and more like a conversation between friends. Tonight, I want to tell you a story. It's not a short one. It's a deep one. It's about a quiet man, a loving father. And the night he had to remember he was also something else. Something forgotten. Something dangerous. It all started last night. With a simple dinner. My son, his wife, and me. My boy, he's my whole world. After his mother passed, the light in my life got very dim, and he became the only thing that kept it burning. I worked 2 jobs my whole life, a quiet office job by day, a security guard by night, so he could have the one thing I never did, a choice. A future without calluses on his hands and worry in his heart. I watched him grow into a good man, a smart man. I watched him meet a woman who was like a lightning bolt, sharp, bright, full of energy and big ideas. I was happy for him. I am happy for him. But these last few years, a distance grew. A slow, creeping chill you don't notice until your breath makes clouds. Phone calls got shorter. Visits became these quick, flashy things. They'd swoop in, show off a new car, talk about their latest investment, their plans for a vacation home, all while I sat in my old armchair. I was part of the furniture. The quiet old man who smiled and nodded. The ATM with a heartbeat. Last night, the chill in the room wasn't just in my bones. It was in the air. We were in their beautiful dining room, all polished wood and cold, modern lights. We'd finished a meal I barely tasted. My daughter-in-law reached across the table and patted my hand. Her fingers were cool. "Dad," she said, her voice sweet as sugar substitute. "We've been so worried. With everything going on in the world, your savings, that little account at First Federal, it's just sitting there, losing value every day. It's not safe." My son was swirling his wine, staring into the glass like it held the answers. He wouldn't look at me. I put on my best confused old man face. The one I'd practiced in the mirror. A little slack in the jaw, a slight squint. "Oh, honey, that's kind, but I'm all right. It's simple for me. I know my PIN, I do my little deposit. It's my routine." I gave a small, shaky smile. That's when my son spoke. His voice was low, flat, like he was reading a weather report for a place he didn't care about. "Actually, Dad, we didn't want you to worry. So we took care of it. Yesterday, when you were napping on the couch after lunch, I saw your card on the coffee table. I gave her the PIN, for safekeeping, so we can manage it better for you." The silence that followed was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. It was a physical thing. It pressed on my eardrums. It squeezed my heart in a cold, tight fist. I looked at my son, my boy, the child I sang to sleep, the teenager I taught to drive, the man I hugged on his wedding day. And I saw a stranger. A man who would sneak. Who would take. Who would hand over his own father's last piece of independence to his wife like it was a coupon. A feeling began in the very center of my chest. A deep, dark, old feeling. It wasn't just anger. It was colder than anger. It was a kind of recognition. Like an old, dormant machine deep inside me felt a key turn. And it began to whir to life. But on the outside, I just smiled. A slow, gentle, grandfatherly smile. The corners of my eyes crinkled. I saw it happen. The moment they thought they'd won. My daughter-in-law's shoulders relaxed. A tiny, triumphant spark flashed in her eyes, gone so fast you'd miss it if you weren't looking for it. She leaned back in her chair, the picture of relief. "The old fool is compliant," her face said. "The old fool is no trouble at all." What she didn't know, what my son, in his greed and his shame, had completely forgotten, was the man who existed before I became Dad. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my water. I set the glass down on the polished wood with a soft, final click. "That's so very thoughtful of you both," I said, my voice a calm, quiet river. Soothing. Really. Looking out for me in my golden years. I let the phrase hang, sweet and sour in the air. It reminds me of a story. From a long time ago. They exchanged a glance. That familiar, tolerant glance. The "here he goes again" glance. My son finally looked at me, a faint, impatient frown on his handsome face. "Back before you were even a thought in my heart," I began, folding my hands on the table. I didn't push paper in an office. And I wasn't just a man in a uniform checking doors. I had a different kind of job. I worked for people. Important people. People who had problems that couldn't be solved with lawyers or police. Problems that needed to disappear. Not with noise. Not with guns. With silence. With information. With knowing which thread to pull to make the whole sweater unravel. My son's frown deepened. confusion now mixed with the impatience. I was very, very good at it, I said, and my smile turned inward, remembering. So good I never used my real name. Not for years. In certain circles, in whispers, they called me the keeper. Not because I kept a ledger, but because I kept secrets. The big, ugly, expensive kind. And I kept people safe. And sometimes, I let my gaze drift to my daughter-in-law, holding it for just a second too long. Sometimes I kept people from things. From other people. From consequences. From getting what they didn't deserve. The air in their perfect dining room changed. It got thin. It got heavy. It was suddenly very hard to breathe. When your mother got sick, I said, turning my full attention back to my son, drilling into his eyes with a focus he hadn't seen from me in decades. I left that life. For her. For the promise of you. I buried the keeper in a deep, dark hole. I threw away the keys. I became soft. I became gentle. I became just Dad. I leaned forward just an inch. Just enough to make the light from that cold modern fixture cast shadows on my face. But a man like that, a keeper, he never really loses his keys. He just puts them in a drawer. And he remembers exactly where that drawer is. My daughter-in-law let out a laugh. It was a brittle, nervous sound like ice cracking underfoot. Dad, that's a great story. Really? You should write a book. She was trying to dismiss me. To put the genie back in the bottle. I didn't blink. I didn't smile. The gentle old man was gone from my eyes. Is it just a story? Let's talk about facts. The account you took the PIN for, the one at First Federal with my so-called life savings, it has exactly $1,247.18 in it. I opened it online last month. Their faces went utterly blank. Like two wiped whiteboards. My real money, I said, the words dropping into the silence like stones into a deep well, isn't in one place. That would be foolish. It's scattered, like seeds in the wind, under names you've never heard and could never trace. In places you can't reach with a phone call or a lawyer. And it is protected by protocols I set up 25 years ago. Protocols designed by a very paranoid, very thorough man. Protocols that trigger one way, and one way only, if someone tries to access my assets without my specific verbal authorization. I saw it then. The first real, primal flicker of fear in my son's eyes. Not embarrassment. Not shame. Fear, he was starting to remember. Not facts, but feelings. The feeling of his father being unknowable. The feeling of a quiet strength in our old house that he could never quite name. When you typed in that PIN last night, I whispered, leaning even closer, the whisper carrying across the table like a secret. You didn't access my retirement fund. You sent a signal. A beacon. You rang a bell in a silent, dark room. And you woke him up. I paused, letting the words sink in, letting the image form in their minds. You woke up the keeper. I pushed my chair back. It didn't scrape. It made a soft, deliberate sound on the rug. I stood up. And I didn't stand up like an old man. My back, which had ached for years, was straight. My shoulders, which had hunched, were square. The simple act of rising from that chair transformed me. The kindly, faded mask of Dad slipped away, and something else looked out through my eyes. Something calm, something ancient, something utterly terrifying in its stillness. You thought you were taking care of a feeble old man. I said, my voice now a low, steady rumble, the voice of bedrock shifting. But I have been taking care of you. Your entire adult life. That lucky break on your mortgage? The down payment that was mysteriously lower than the asking price? That came from a charitable housing grant you never applied for. I applied for it. With a phone call. My daughter-in-law's mouth was slightly open. Your wife's boutique, I continued, my eyes locking onto hers. The angel investor, who believed in her vision when the banks said no? That was a fund I control. An investor who doesn't exist on any public record. Her hand flew to her throat. Every safety net you've ever had, I said, sweeping my gaze between them. Every soft landing, every lucky chance was me. My hand, steadying you from the shadows. The keeper keeping you. I let the weight of that settle on them, a crushing weight. And with one text message from this phone, I slowly drew my phone from my pocket. It wasn't a smartphone. It was an old brick-like thing, scratched and worn. A burner phone. A relic. I can make every single one of those nets vanish. As if they were never there. My daughter-in-law shot to her feet, her chair shrieking backwards against the floor. You can't do that, she shrieked, the polished facade shattering. That's our money. We earned that. We're family. I turned my gaze to her. It was like turning the beam of a lighthouse on a small boat in a storm. She physically flinched. You stopped being family, I said, each word precise and cold. The moment you decided to treat me like an inconvenient vault. Family doesn't steal in the night. Family doesn't manipulate. Family cares for you when you're weak, it doesn't prey on you. I looked back at my son. He was still sitting, but he seemed to have collapsed in on himself. His face was ashen. Tears were welling in his eyes, but they were tears of pure terror. Of understanding. Dad! The word was a choked sob. Please. I'm sorry. I didn't know. The emotion hit me then. A tsunami, breaking through the icy wall of the keeper. It was all there. The decades of love, the bedtime stories, the scraped knees, the pride at his graduation, the hollow ache after his mother died, the slow poison of this betrayal. It was a physical pain in my chest, so sharp it took my breath away. It was almost enough to make me crumble. To sit back down. To forgive it all. To be just Dad again. But I couldn't. Not anymore. The drawer was open. The keys were in my hand. The apology, I said, the pain making my voice thick and rough, comes after the lesson. If there is an after. I held up the old phone. My thumb hovered over the screen. They could see it, a single text message draft. The cursor blinked next to a string of numbers that wasn't a phone number. It was a code. One message, I said. One press of this button. The signal goes out. It cannot be recalled. Within 24 hours, your financial life becomes a puzzle with half the pieces missing. Every line of credit tracing back to my channels is severed. Loans are called in immediately. The angel investor demands full, immediate repayment with penalties. The grant is investigated as fraud. I let that image paint itself in the silence. The foreclosure notices. The bankruptcy lawyers. The beautiful house, the cars, the boutique, the vacations, all dissolving like sandcastles under a wave. Here is what happens now. I said, my tone leaving no room for discussion, no room for negotiation. It was the voice of a man stating the weather. You will drive me home. In my car. You will give me back my card. You will forget you ever saw a pin. You will visit me every Sunday. Not for a check. For dinner. And you will look me in the eye, and you will mean it when you ask how my week was. I took a step toward the grand hallway that led to the front door. I moved differently. There was no shuffle. My steps were quiet, deliberate, balanced. The steps of a man who knew how to move without being heard. You have a choice, I said, not looking back. You can have a father. Flawed old, but here. Or you can have a ghost. A memory. A man who disappears from your life as completely as that money will. But you cannot have both. You cannot have my love and my wallet. The time for that is over. I didn't wait for their answer. I walked out of their beautiful, cold dining room, through the marble foyer, and pulled open their heavy front door. The night air hit me. It was cool. It was clean. It smelled of freedom and loneliness. I stood on their perfect porch, under a motion sensor light that flicked on, blinding me for a second. I didn't go to my old sedan. I just stood there, listening. I heard the silence inside break. First, her voice. A sharp, panicked hiss, words tumbling over each other. Asterisk, what did he mean? What is he talking about? What have you gotten us into? Asterisk, then his voice. Broken. Pleading. Asterisk, I don't know. I don't remember. Mom never said. He was just Dad. Asterisk. Asterisk, he's not just Dad. Asterisk, she screamed, and the sound was like glass breaking. Then quieter, desperate whispers. Arguing. Crying. The front door opened behind me. It didn't slam. It opened slowly, hesitantly. My son stepped out. He looked 10 years older. The confident, successful man was gone. In his place was a scared boy. His shoulders were slumped under the weight of what he'd done. In his trembling hand, held out like an offering, was my blue debit card from First Federal. He didn't say a word. He couldn't. He just looked at me. And in his red-rimmed eyes, for the first time in years, I didn't see greed, or impatience, or boredom. I saw my son. Truly saw him. Scared. Sorry. Lost. I took the card. I didn't snatch it. I took it slowly and I put it in my shirt pocket. Then I put my hand on his shoulder. It was a heavy hand. A hand that had done things he could never imagine. A keeper's hand. But in that moment it was also just a father's hand. The car, I said, my voice gentler now, but with the steel still underneath. Let's go home. He nodded, a tear finally tracking down his cheek. He wiped it away with a rough, angry motion, ashamed of it. He went back inside. I heard more hushed, frantic conversation. A minute later, he came out alone, holding my car keys. He walked past me, head down, and went to my old sedan. He got in the driver's side. I took one last look at their beautiful hollow house. Then I got in the passenger seat. The drive to my small, simple house across town was silent. The kind of silence that is full of words too big to say. He stared straight ahead, gripping the wheel so tight his knuckles were white. I looked out the window, watching the expensive neighborhoods give way to older, quieter streets with big trees and small, well-kept houses. My street.as we turned onto my block, a strange feeling pricked at the back of my neck. A feeling I hadn't felt in 25 years. The feeling of being watched. Not casually. Professionally. My house came into view. My little porch light was on, a warm yellow circle against the night. But parked directly across the street, under the thick shadow of the big oak tree, was a car. A black, sleek sedan with windows so dark they seemed to drink the light around them. It hadn't been there when I left. My son saw it too. "Who's that?" he muttered, his voice hoarse. "I don't know," I lied. My heart was beginning to drum a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. Asterisk thump. 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 Asterisk. He pulled into my driveway and put the car in park. He just sat there, staring at the black car. "Go home," I said to him, my voice low and urgent. "Dad, what's?" Asterisk. "Go home, son." Asterisk. The command in my voice was absolute. The keeper's voice. He heard it. He flinched. He looked at me, his eyes wide with new fear. The driver's door of the black car opened. A man got out. He was tall, dressed in a dark, expensive-looking coat that wasn't quite right for the season. He moved with an easy, confident grace. He closed the car door and then he just leaned against it. He folded his arms and looked right at our car. Right at me. The porch light from my house didn't reach him. He was just a silhouette. But then he lifted one hand, and he gave me a small, familiar wave. A two-fingered salute from the temple, then a casual flick of the wrist. My blood didn't run cold. It froze solid. Every instinct, every buried nerve ending from my old life, screamed a single name in the silence of my mind. Carter, John Carter. My old associate. My old handler. The man who gave me my last, worst job before I walked away. The man I hadn't seen or spoken to since the day I told him I was done, the day my wife got her diagnosis. My son saw my face. He saw the color drain from it. He saw the way my body went rigid. "Dad, who is that?" "It doesn't matter," I whispered, my eyes locked on the silhouette across the street. "Listen to me. You drive away. You go straight home. You do not look back. You do not come back here until I call you. Do you understand?" "But, asterisk, do you understand?" Asterisk, I snapped, turning to him, and the fear in my eyes must have been terrifying, because he just nodded mute. "Go. Now." I got out of the car. I shut the door. I stood in my own driveway, facing the street. I didn't look back as I heard my son's car reverse, the tires crunching on the gravel. I heard him drive away, the sound fading into the night, that I was alone. Just me, and the man from my past leaning against a black car, that he pushed himself off the car and started walking across the street. He moved without sound. His shoes made no noise on the asphalt. He stepped onto my lawn and walked into the circle of my porch light. Time hadn't been kind to John Carter, but it hadn't broken him either. It had refined him, sharpened him. His hair was silver now, cut short. His face was a map of hard lines and sharper intelligence. His eyes, when the light caught them, were the pale, washed-out blue of a winter sky. Empty and cold. He stopped a few feet from me. He smiled. It was a smile that touched only his mouth. "Hello, keeper," he said. His voice was exactly as I remembered. Smooth. Calm. Like poured oil. "Long time." "Carter," I said. My own voice sounded strange to me. "You're a long way from home." "Home is where the work is," he said, his eyes scanning me, taking in my old sweater, my slacks, my simple house. "You've gone native. I almost didn't recognize you. What do you want?" "Straight to business. I always liked that about you." He took a half step closer. I didn't move. "A piece of work has come up. A delicate piece. The kind of thing that requires a specific, retired skill set. Your skill set." "I'm retired." He chuckled, a dry, soundless thing. "Retirement is a myth we tell civilians. Men like us, we don't retire. We just wait. The world has a way of calling back the tools it needs. The world can call someone else. I'm out." "See, that's the thing," Carter said, his smile fading. The pleasant mask dropped, and what was underneath was pure, transactional steel. "You're not out. Not really. The life you built here, this quiet little fiction, it's built on the foundation of the work you did for me. The money you scattered to the wind, some of those channels, keeper, are still my channels. The protocols you're so proud of? I helped design the architecture. I know the back doors. A chill, deeper than any I'd felt at my son's table, seeped into my bones. "This isn't a social call," Carter continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur. "It's an invitation. A friendly one. For old time's sake. You do this one last job for me. You come back into the fold just for a week. And in return, I don't burn your peaceful little life to the ground." He glanced meaningfully at my house. "And I don't revisit the terms of your son's various windfalls, which, upon audit, might look less like luck and more like money laundering." He had me. He knew it. The keeper knew it. He had built a box around my entire life, and I'd been living happily inside it, thinking it was my own creation. "What's the job?" The words tasted like ash. "Not here," he said, looking around my quiet, sleeping street with mild distaste. "We'll talk. Tomorrow. Be at the old place. The diner on 7th, noon." He reached into his coat pocket. I tensed, every muscle coiling. But he just pulled out a small, plain black cell phone, identical to the one in my pocket. He held it out. "Take this. It's clean. It's the only one you use to talk to me. I'll call you at 10 a.m. with instructions. Don't be late." I looked at the phone. I looked at his face. I had no choice. The keeper understood that. The father in me screamed in protest that I took the phone. "Good," Carter said. The empty smile returned. "It's good to see you, old friend. Rest up. You'll need it." He gave me one last, long look, then turned and walked back across the street. He got into his black car. The engine purred to life, a low, predatory sound. The car pulled away from the curb and slid down the street, disappearing into the darkness that I stood on my driveway, the new phone cold and heavy in my hand. The porch light seemed suddenly weak, pathetic. The warmth of my little house felt like a trap. My son betrayal had woken the keeper. But Carter's arrival, that had unleashed him. And now the keeper had a job to do. To protect the very family that had just tried to pick his pocket. The irony was so bitter I could taste it. I walked inside. I locked the door. I didn't turn on any more lights. I went to the living room and sat in my old armchair, in the dark. I set the two phones, my old one and Carter's new one. On the table beside me. I stared into the darkness, not seeing the room, seeing only the past. The faces. The secrets. The things I'd done. The man I'd been. And I knew, with a certainty that settled in my stomach like a stone, that the gentle, quiet life was over. The father who baked cookies and told bad jokes was going back into his drawer. The man sitting in this chair now, waiting for the sun to rise, was the keeper. And the keeper had just been given an ultimatum. Do one last terrible thing for a terrible man, or watch everything he loves be destroyed. But here's the thing about a keeper, he doesn't just keep secrets for others. He keeps a few for himself. And as I sat there in the dark, one of those old, buried secrets began to stir. A piece of information from my last job for Carter. A piece I was never supposed to have. A piece that could be a weapon, or a trap. The game was on. And I was the piece that had to move first. But that is where we must pause tonight. The story is just beginning. The real danger is just arriving. My son is home, terrified and confused. A ghost from my past is calling in a debt. And I am an old man with 2 phones and a lifetime of secrets, standing on the edge of a cliff. If you were in my shoes at this very moment, what would you do? Would you run? Would you fight? Would you trust the man from the past? Or would you dig up your own buried weapons? Type it in the comments. I'm curious. And tell me where you're watching from. It helps to know I'm not just talking to the dark. Because the next part of this story, it's where everything changes. It's where I have to go back to the diner on 7th Street. It's where I'll find out what Carter really wants. And it's where I'll have to decide if I'm going to be his puppet one more time. Or if I'm going to cut the strings, no matter the cost. If you want to know what happens at that diner, if you want to know the terrible thing Carter wants me to do, and if you want to see if this old keeper has one last, good move left in him, you make sure you're subscribed. You hit that notification bell. Because when I continue this story, the tension will be so thick you could cut it with a knife. The twists will come fast. And the cliffhanger will leave you breathless. Until then, remember this. The past never really leaves you. It just waits. It waits for the moment you think you're safe. And then it knocks on your door. Good night. For now.